All right. Well, let's get this show on the road. Thanks everyone for taking time out of your busy schedule to engage with the cooperative. Your engagement makes us better. As always, I'd like to go ahead and begin with the tech update. So, Ra, are you ready for that?
I am. So the team is making good progress on the LLBM 013 beta 1 release. Last time I said that attestation blocks is the final piece that needed to be worked on for this release. And NetZipper has the code in for the attestation blocks. Right now, he's doing testing and fixing the logic bugs and some of the refactoring needed for that. Tomislav is also working with him on that for fixing the errors that they're seeing. There will be more tests that need to be written for this piece because a new piece of code. But once this is all done, we should be able to release 013 beta 1 to the testnet. After that, the plan is to do the next version, which we're currently expecting would be the release candidate for LLBM. Tomislav has started to look into the handling of invalid blocks for that release. So handling of invalid blocks will not be released in the 013 beta 1, but will be released in the release candidate. So he has done some significant design work for that. And he will be in parallel, even as we're focused on 013 beta 1, completing that, he'll start looking into the invalid blocks work and so that the team can go on to, especially Stas is on vacation this week, but he's going to be coming back next week. So there may be pieces or tasks that he can take on for that, that we should be able to moving towards that release candidate. And once whatever issues we discover from the 013 beta 1 and the release candidate on testnet, once those are all resolved, that would be the release that would go to the mainnet. That's the plan as of right now for LLBM on the mainnet. Isaac is reviewing and fixing items in the Rolang area, primarily Will's PRs related to proof of stake contract. So once his review is completed and others have taken a look at it, those should be able to be merged also into the releases that are going in. Another task we started this week is a documentation task. Initially, it's focused on basically documentation for validator onboarding to explain, what are all different concepts. There are business contracts where to get in place. We have to give them the steps and process to become a validator, first on the testnet, then on the mainnet, and the code fragments that they need to execute in the process, the contracts they need to execute, all of that. So we have started working on that. Thank you, Raphael, for jumping in and helping with the Docusaurus setup for the documentation. So even though we're starting with the external validators documentation right now, eventually we want to get all the documentation for the project for all relevant stakeholders, maybe some for developers, some for people that want to join the core dev team, all of those kinds of things eventually we'll be putting in there. But since this is a documentation task, I believe there are quite a few people in the community who should be able to participate either in creating the documentation or critiquing the documentation and saying, hey, this is missing or this is not clear, that kind of a thing. So I think there is a possibility for various skill levels of the membership to be able to contribute to this task. So I request that whoever has a few hours to spare, please do join the team in both improving the quality of the documentation and also making sure that it's broadly usable and that it's clear. So I invite participation from anybody on that. So basically, there is a GitHub repository for the documentation. We have some GDocs stuff that we're Google Docs that we're using for kind of creating outlines and assignments and figuring out existing sources, all of that. But the actual content would be on GitHub. The Google Docs we're using more as a planning and coordination and location tracking or keeping type of a place. And maybe initial drafts also will be in Google Docs before we get them into Markdown on the GitHub. So that's what we're doing. And then the Zoom meeting immediately after the dev stand-up on Mondays is kind of what we're using for coordination on a weekly basis. We don't want to do too many meetings here. Really, the coordination should mostly happen through either Google Docs or GitHub. The Zoom meeting is just to negotiate any points that need to be negotiated, sort of with a face-to-face type of thing. So that's another major piece that we have started on to make the project broadly usable to validators and beyond. The other piece I want to speak to is performance testing. Once we have the O13 beta 1 on the testnet, we will be starting some performance testing. There is another task we're hoping to be able to get at least some of that done for the release candidate, which is the enhancing of error reporting and error handling. On the performance testing, the team had a robust discussion today. There was in the milestones, there is a milestone called thread mapping. So there was some conversation around that to say, you know, how are threads being managed and what's the current state of, you know, what are the bottlenecks really in terms of getting full concurrence with the post LLVM code. And one of the bottlenecks that was identified was sort of a mismatch between how Rolang operates and how the thread handling in Monix and other libraries that we're using works. So there was an idea that our discussion that maybe we need to write some level of our own thread management package consistent with how Rolang operates, but still use what the existing libraries give in terms of APIs or otherwise as much as possible. Because, you know, we're not trying to write a general thread management package. There are plenty of those already. We just want to say, okay, whatever is not working with existing libraries, what do we need to do differently? And supplement those libraries with what we can do. This is not, again, something that we'll be doing for the release candidate necessarily, but it is something that will follow on perhaps. We're still in the early stages of discovery and design on this. So once we have O13 beta 1 on the testnet, we'll run some performance tests and in particular run the performance tests in a way that they pinpoint to specific parts of thread management where the performance bottlenecks are. So once we know that, that'll be the basis for figuring out what we should do, if anything, and how. So that's the plan there. And the external customer project that Dennis and NutZipper are working on is going well. Dennis is working full-time on it, and NutZipper is working on the core development, but also giving a hand to Dennis and working with him as needed, because a lot of times you need a couple of people to look at an issue, analyze it, and say what's the best way to move forward. So those, that primarily is my tech update. With that, are there any questions, comments on anything that I said?
Yeah, so I just want to elaborate on what you were saying about the thread stuff. So in order for RChain to sort of get the best out of existing hardware, we need to make sure that we have the right utilization of the hardware. And so in order to in order to simplify writing the code, what our node code does today is to use an existing threads package. And then we're hoping that that threads package utilizes the hardware physical threads in a way that's optimal for us. Now, in general, what they're doing is they're trying to write for all kinds of clients, right? For a very wide variety of potential clients who are using their thread managed package. And so it's not necessarily optimized for the usage patterns that Rolang affords. And that's because, you know, Rolang is a very, very heavy concurrency user, and not the sort of thing that, and we do a lot of synchronization across the threads. And that's not typical of the way, say, standard web stack works, right? Where you have threads, you know, lots of isolated threads, which are handling different user requests. So when we do a block merge, we're going to have a bunch of threads that are isolated because we know they're isolated, but there's also potentially synchronization across those threads. And so the way we map onto the hardware is slightly different than the way your standard web stack might map onto the hardware. So we just need a thread package that is optimized for the way Rolang executes as opposed to some general purpose thread package. And we'll be looking into what's the best usage for us so that we can maximize the mapping from the logical Rolang threads to the physical threads that are available on the hardware, so that we can get that near linear scaling. What we're seeing is that over time, the COM events take longer and longer, and that's almost certainly because there's a mismatch between the way the thread package that we're using works and the way we want it to work, basically. So that's something we'll be looking into to be able to, you know, get that nice on ramp where it's like you put more horsepower under the hood, and we are able to turn that into acceleration of the network throughput. Does that make sense to folks?
Yep.
Sweet.
It
Raphael, go ahead.
It makes sense to me. I'm wondering, is this an optimization of existing work? I mean, basically the rule of thumb is, you know, make it work and then make it work fast, right?
That's pretty much what's going on. Yeah, and we'll what we're trying to do is to get to a repro where we can say to the thread library maintainer, here's some code which you can run again and again and again, which shows that your threads package gets slower and slower over time. And that shouldn't be happening because we're not retaining any resources. So something's wrong in your package. And so we'll give that to them, let them be working on that. They're motivated. Now they've got a client with a repro, but we'll also be doing a deep dive ourselves to figure out what's going wrong in their package and whether or not it's easier to fix that or to write our own.
Okay,
does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does, and it partially answers my next question. So we're not necessarily reliant on this second party for this work on the...
No, we don't have to. In fact, one of the things I mentioned to the team is that back when I was looking into this, like, so the special K, which was my first implementation of this kind of node, I did all in terms of delimited continuations. And the reason I did that was because the guy who wrote the Scala delimited continuations package showed that his implementation was regularly beating the green threads of that time. So it may be that we go back to some kind of delimited continuation style architecture just for the thread management. Maybe that's too heavy-handed. I don't know, but it is. But the reason I mentioned delimited continuations is because they have very pleasant functional semantics, and I know through conversations with Oleg that there's a nice fit between delimited continuations and the mobile process calculator. So if people don't know who Oleg is, I'm talking about Oleg Kiselyov, who is kind of the guy who did much of the research on delimited continuations. He's kind of famous for a lot of things in Haskell, but he's very famous for his for the work that he did on delimited continuations. So that might be a good path. But at the end of the day, we don't want to invent anything if we don't have to. So if we can get by with just saying, hey, Monix thread library maintainer, here's a repro, please go fix, then that would be the best thing.
All right, I think that answers my question.
Sweet.
I have a second question, and that concerns external validators.
Okay.
The overwhelming majority of people that are going to be running external validators are probably not familiar with GitHub. And so I'm wondering whether or not using GitHub as the central repository for working this documentation would benefit those people.
I want to be working with partners who are familiar with best practices. And right now, GitHub is part of best practices. So we really don't want to roll out to folks who are not sort of in that crowd just yet. That's my druthers. I mean, maybe there's business arguments to go the other way, but from my point of view, I want seasoned pros who know how to do CI inside GitHub, and that we can work with using the standard tools. Because we need to all be able to have high bandwidth conversations in case anything goes wrong. And this is going to be really important once we open it up outside of the co-op, right? Once there are other people, everybody needs to be on the same page about the tools and about the SLAs that we want in place, right? So the co-op's going to sign up to being, have a certain level of responsiveness, right? And we want our partners to be able to sign up for the same thing. They're going to have a certain level of responsiveness so that nothing goes wrong, right? Or if it does, we all respond in time to make sure that the users of the network don't suffer. And from my point of view, that means everybody's on the same page with the tool set.
Yeah, I guess I'm more focusing on the generation of the documentation. That it might be helpful to include people in the generation of that documentation that don't necessarily have experience with GitHub. That's where I was asking.
Oh, I mean, I don't.
No,
I think we
yeah.
can solve it. If all the documentation is in Markdown or something, we can generate a static web page out of that Markdown, and that will be served on the web.
Yeah, I mean, maybe actually Raphael is going to do his demo. Raphael, I don't know if you also want to show the DocuSource so that people have an idea about the look and feel of what this is going to be, perhaps after your
speaking of which, let's give the floor to Raphael because he wants to give us a demo, and he can also maybe speak to the DocuSource stuff.
Okay. Okay, so let's go. Yes, I'll start with the small dappy demo. So yes, I'm Raphael. I'm the lead developer of the dappy project. Dappy is a public and open source name system that is powered by blockchain and a co-resolution mechanism. So it solves many issues that are linked to the single ownership and the single management of domain names. So that's the name system part. And we also have a dedicated web browser that is built on Chromium. So today I just want to show a new kind of application in the dappy ecosystem. So dappy is powered by blockchain. It means that you can interact with the name system directly without going through a reseller like a registrar, a GoDaddy or something like that. And just to show you how simple it is, you just have to have a JSON file in your web development repository, and then you just run the push zones command, and this DNS data will be uploaded to the blockchain, and that's it. So if this name does not exist yet, it will be automatically purchased. I have not prepared this part, so I can't show, but it's very, very simple. You can have even 30 zones in one JSON file, and the program will purchase 30 domain names, and it can also do, of course, monitoring. You can know every certificate that you are working with. So this provides very good visibility that you will very, very hardly get with the legacy systems, because in legacy systems, you have hundreds of corporations that can manage certificates, so you can't have really a true picture. So so today I'll show the equivalent of this dappy CLI, but for people coming from like regular landscapes. So companies that would want to switch to dappy, or like engineers not familiar with blockchain, they will want to go the easy way. So of course it's credit card payment. It's much more simple than cryptocurrency for many, many people. So we will show with the RChain testnet how it works to purchase a NFT in the dappy name system, because our domains are NFTs. So that's the homepage. So I'm already logged in, but you can log in on the fly. So let's choose a few domain names. Hello dappy, like 50. Hi, this is my domain. Another domain. So you can list, and they are checked. So if you try to purchase Adidas, it will tell you that this is a protected domain name. You can't purchase it because we have to protect brands, major brands. So that's it. You can now just proceed to the payment. You will be taken to a Stripe page. So it's very easy. Of course, we don't do that. We use an external service to do that. So this is fake data, of course. Don't try to purchase something with those numbers. So yeah, the price may change. So you just saw 48 multiplied by 3. But yeah, the main price would be around $40. So now the order is successfully, recorded. And now we will just run some loop programs to purchase those domain names. So this will send a transaction on the testnet, and we'll do it 3 times because we have 3 domain names to order. So they are all pending right now. So all those operations are done by the Fabco company on behalf of the users. So this is the step 1, and the step 2 will simply be the capability to receive those NFTs on a user-owned public key address. But yeah, it will be a box ID, but yeah, you get the point. For simplicity purpose, we purchase the NFTs and then we can send them to you, so you don't have to deal with the complicated like purchasing cryptocurrency and purchasing NFT stuff. Okay, so the first one is secured. So you see that the testnet is going faster and faster at each release. That's cool, because this sends a transaction and then gets the result from the transaction. So so yeah, that's the first one. Okay, so you see that it's secured. Let's go to the second one, and then I have just one small thing to show and we will be fine. So we have a name system deployed on the testnet currently. Of course, I can show you all the domain names that oops, that have been purchased.
So what are some characteristics of domain names in dappy? Are they paths or are they dot based, or how do they?
Yeah, they follow exactly the same right to left pattern. So it's pretty strange, but that's the way DNS went. So we're just following this syntax, and
Okay.
subdomains are just divided this way. We just have this .d that is a visual differentiator from the DNS domains.
Okay.
At the end, but it follows the same syntax. But that's exactly the thing I wanted to talk about. So let's just finish this. So at first, yeah, I was hesitating between left to right because it makes more sense, but it's such a, a shock for many people to go from left to right that we decided. Okay, so that's it. We have our 3 domains that have been purchased on the testnet. And of course, the next step for Bobby 3 is to give the box ID and to receive the domain name. So that's basically how it will work. And yeah, last things I wanted to show. So we have currently a strong focus on B2B web applications, because industry-wide, there are many cybersecurity issues with the DNS and HTTPS. But we are a Web3 native company, so I just want to show the things we are exploring as well. And one of them is a new syntax in the search bar for collaborative domains. So we will allow people to ask for domain names or for web applications that are endorsed by multiple parties. And you just can't do it with DNS because you can only put one address. So what we have is a way for the browser to query collaborative websites. So the simplest example is Nike and Jordan. They have a common, operation. So you just type Nike.d and Jordan.d in the bar. And what the browser will do is try to resolve. The browser will ask Nike.d, hey, do you have a website configured that is Nike and Jordan? And it will ask the same question to Jordan. And if both parties have configured this collaborative domain name, then the website will launch on dappy browser. And the user has the visual confirmation that what he sees on the screen has been endorsed and is part of a collaborative operation. So that's one of the new things that we will propose very shortly, because we have everything ready for just coding this final part. So yeah, that's like a new syntactic stuff that we will introduce.
That's pretty awesome, dude. That's really cool.
Yep, thanks. And okay, so I think that's it for this demo. Then I can quickly. So yeah, you can see all the domains that have been purchased already. Yeah, I can show this docs thing. So yeah, we will use a technology called Docusaurus for the RChain documentations. It's built by Facebook. Nothing is fancy in this choice, so it's pretty like thousands of projects use Docusaurus. So yeah, I think I'll just be showing what it looks like. Okay, I need to kill my web server. And yeah, it will be, the pages look, okay. The pages look like regular markdown files. So it will be very easy for anyone to propose changes, to add pages, etc. No coding required, just maybe GitHub knowledge required, but that will be fine. So that's what it looks like. You can see that we have put the get started page in the Docusaurus. And then we will have all those staking requirements and path for external validators to go through. So
That's cool.
Yeah. And
Makes me want to write documentation.
it has a night mode as well.
Great. So when I'm driving in my Tesla and I pull over in the evening, I can switch it to night mode
Yeah, that's right.
and read the RChain documentation. Very good.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure there are voice to text translators that you could use, Greg, if you want to write documentation while you're driving your Tesla. I'll do the research and find you the plugin that we can put in there.
That's awesome. Very good. Very good. Okay. Thank you, Raphael. Good demo. I'm hoping that Jacob Hoffman from Web 10 will be able to give us a demo of his stuff. He and I had a very good conversation. I'm quite interested in seeing what we might do in terms of having RChain B's backend service for the Web 10 offering that Jacob Hoffman has put together. So I was hoping he might show up today, but I think it was too short notice for him. So we'll look for another time when he can give us a demo. Moving on, so a few things, housekeeping things. So the board met yesterday. A lot of good stuff, a lot of good conversation happened. Very productive, very positive in my opinion. But it was all informational. So apart from approving the minutes, there were no votes taken. We will give a lot more detail and color on the board meeting and the closed door session on Friday. I know that Steve Henley has some reminders for us. Steve?
Yeah, thank you, Greg. Hello, everybody. I just want to do our weekly reminder as the run-up to the annual general meeting, which is scheduled for October 24th. So we're still soliciting for people who are interested in joining the nominating committee. So they'll be forming this week, but it's not too late to put your name in the hat. I'll post the email address where you can send an email to the nominating committee, express your interest. I'll put that email in the member channel in Discord. And as well, I'll put in the director qualification statement form in Discord as well for people who are interested in putting their name in the hat to be a candidate to be a board of director. And once again, the deadline to self-nominate is August 25th. So I'll just keep reminding people of that August 25th date until that happens. But if you're interested in perhaps being on the board, please fill out the director qualification statement form, and yeah, we'd love to have you go through the process of the interviewing process. So if you have any questions, just feel free to ping me on Discord as well. Thank you, Greg.
I'm a little curious. You mentioned that you'll post the qualifications for being a director. What are the obligations for being on the nomination committee?
As far as obligations, so there'll be a few meetings as far as preparatory meetings, as far as what all needs to be done, and as far as the run up to the annual general meeting. So there's that pre-planning and organizing aspect. So they'll be meeting for that. They have to schedule interviews for board candidates. And that's dependent on how many people self-nominate. So those are the two primary functions. And then as they go through that, they'll put together their recommendations for for candidates to the board, sort of a draft ballot. But it is the current board of directors that makes the final ballot that appears for voting in the lead up to the annual general meeting.
Excellent. And Steve, if I understand correctly, coming up in next week, is it, or a week after, we have the RChain ecosystem meeting?
Yes. So August 11th is the second RChain system partner meeting. So this is a meeting for people who are building on RChain to come together and share their project, their ideas and thoughts with one another, so that people within RChain and projects know who's out there and who's doing what. So there is private and confidential information shared. So if you are building on RChain, there is a process. It's similar to getting permission to attend the closed door member meeting. So you have to sign the non-disclosure agreement to attend the meeting. But if you are building on RChain, have a project, and you want to join the meeting, or perhaps even talk about your project, please send me a message on Discord, and I'll be sure to send you out the non-disclosure, the introduction email, and work to getting you an invite to attend the meeting.
Awesome. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Daryl, are you available to do the community week in review?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Greg. Thanks, Steve. So here is the week in review for July 28th to August 3rd. On Friday, in the Climate Coordination RCast, we discussed a movement in the workforce that's moving from big tech into climate, an accident involving a chess-playing robot, and recent climate legislative progress, now named the Inflation Reduction Act. We also discussed the Open Metaverse Alliance versus the closed systems from Meta and Apple in the upcoming war over ownership of the next internet. It's as if Ready Player One is becoming more of a documentary. On Monday in the Casper Stand-Up, this week's Casper Stand-Up covered a reformulation of the OSLF proof rules in terms of the native type theory construction of Williams and Stay. Yesterday in the Communications Working Group, we mainly discussed our various funding options and how the Communications Working Group could help. And this morning in the members hangout, we discussed Jim's health. His surgery is complete and he is scheduled to head home as we speak, actually, which is probably why he's not here on the call. So he is en route to his home. Very happy about that. Raphael gave a dry run of his demo and we discussed potential funding options for the co-op. And I'd just like to note that from the Chinese community, as a couple of days ago, there is a new WeChat group that's started by a group of supportive Chinese community members. And that
Awesome.
takes us to now.
Great. Thank you, Daryl. Thank you. So on the heels of that, I'd like to deliver some good news. Two things. One, we've had the article on sharding and small world networks published in the Economic Standard. I think that's a pretty good endorsement for the quality of the article. And we've been getting a lot of feedback from all throughout the industry sector, and people have been consistently saying that they're very impressed with the article. In case people don't understand or don't know what I'm talking about, essentially I've been arguing that we don't get this kind of infinite or even just deep nesting of shards that if you look at real world networks, they follow this kind of small world network principles. So the sort of technical definition of a small world network is one where you've got this the length of a path between two randomly chosen nodes is proportional to the log of the total number of nodes in the network. And what you find is that that kind of constraint forces clustering, but that kind of constraint is really it's necessary to roll out networks that have the right communication cost, the right coordination cost inside the networks. And so you find these kinds of networks everywhere in all in networks produced by human design processes and networks produced by natural selection and evolution. So and we have no reason to expect that the blockchain networks will be any different. And so the kind of architecture that RChain proposes with a mainnet as a backbone, connecting a bunch of more or less top level shards makes the most sense in terms of small world networks, and ends up giving us the maximum or maximal utilization of the rev at a minimum coordination cost. So basically, the shortest time, it's the shortest time to the maximal utilization of the rev, because all the shards can be developing on their own, right? So companies like Smith's News could be developing an RChain shard, or I don't know, Amazon could be developing an RChain shard, who knows? But they do that on their own, independent of having to coordinate with each other. But then once their shards stand up, then there are all kinds of reasons why they might want to connect with those shards with each other. And that's where the rev gets maximal usage, because then they use the rev to do this cross shard coordination. So that's in a nutshell the contents of the article, and it has a lot of good reception within the industry. I'll post links as soon as I have them from my co-author. In addition, this morning, RChain sat down with Arjun Ghosh, who is the CA for U.S. Senator Kirsten Gilibrand. And we talked about a range of blockchain things. I will have to say that Mr. Ghosh was very articulate and knowledgeable about blockchain, and there was a significant common ground with respect to sort of round dismissal of the proof of work networks, and quite hungry for their replacement, and that a network like RChain, which makes the economic proposition of switching for miners and for the users of the network so compelling that it probably doesn't need a lot of legislation to force this to happen. And not a bunch of regulation on that front. However, there seemed to be general sympathy towards the idea that utility tokens should not be considered to be securities, and so there is a place for regulation and legislation there. So good conversation, and it's really good. Like we began our process of moving towards the legislators in April, and it's August, and we're having the conversations. So I just want people to understand that this is a very definite, specific, positive result of the work that we're doing there, and that it will have potentially very beneficial consequences for us. It could be that the omnibus bill in front of the Congress, the omnibus blockchain bill in front of the Congress includes exemptions for utility tokens, narrowly defined, and that would mean that we could list on U.S. exchanges even before we have external validators, without risk of having our tokens be considered securities and being slapped with an action by the SEC. So that's a lot to unpack. Any questions about that?
Yeah. First of all, kudos to you and Ralph for opening these doors. That's amazing. And I'm really curious to hear if you got into any detail with him about what would constitute us being a utility token.
We didn't have time to get into the specifics of the definition, but I know that there is an op-ed piece being produced by one of the blockchain packs, and that will go into more of those details. and hopefully that that will result in deepening the discussion around those points.
Nice.
Any other questions for folks?
Yes, I have a question about this. The fact of being labeled security or utility. So, what would be the step necessary for the officials you were referring to, or for Rev to be labeled prior to external validators as a utility token?
Well, I mean, so just to be clear, right now both of those horses are running at the same time, right? So we're not going to try to sequentialize them. Like RChain is all about optimistic concurrency, right? So we get all the nodes, all the blocks, all the Roland code running at once, and so who knows which one comes first? But you know, what has to happen is there some language about what constitutes utility would have to be hammered out and agreed by both, you know, both sides of both houses, right? So that's a lot of coordination cost right there. But you know, maybe there's enough of a meeting of minds that it doesn't take too much effort. Meanwhile, you know, on the other side, we just need to get you know, 013 beta 2 or the release candidate out to the testnet, and then we will launch external validators. So, you know, it's kind of, who knows which one is going to win, but either one of those events now pops, and we're happy to begin aggressively pursuing listing on exchanges so that US and European folks who want to run smart contracts on RChain can access Rev to do that by purchasing the Rev through exchanges. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. That's
good. Any other questions, comments, concerns, considerations? Wonderful. I would like to give my heartfelt thanks to everyone in the RChain staff and development team and wider community for all the hard work that everyone is putting in. I know that it is non-trivial to build a network like this, and I really appreciate all the efforts that everyone puts in. I would also like to say, please, you know, stay safe. I've been hearing a lot of I've been reading a lot of stories that that COVID is still quite active, and also you know, the summer's moving by very rapidly. You know, but please take some time, get out and enjoy the summer, and we will see you on the other side.